All right. Just like last
Episode.
episode was our first episode two, we got our first episode three.
Let's go. Let's go.
Our first top five too. So this would hopefully be a little bit shorter, a little bit more of a bite-sized episode, but you never know because we've got a great debate coming
I
up.
I
We
do
already
agree.
know we've got a great debate, and it's not even over rankings, it's just over pure philosophy. So we'll try to get into that pretty quickly. We got the
hmm
top five quarterbacks of all time. I don't know
hmm
how you did your list. I'm sure we'll get into it, but there's definitely some room for interpretation here. So it'll
Sure.
be interesting to see how that differs for us.
hmm Yeah, I mean, I can lay out just briefly kind of the big things that I look at when I'm ranking.
All right.
So, I mean, A is just like talent and production. Um, Super important. Longevity of that production matters. Um, right. So like there's, Patrick Mahomes, for example, is not on my list, but
Hmm.
like he I if he continues playing the way he is, he will be someday. It's just the longevity that you need to have. And then winning, because for me, I think quarterbacks, I think basketball players, and like that might be it. Maybe hockey. I don't know how you feel about it. I think the basketball and quarterbacks winning is like I factor in most heavily. Like
Hmm.
I'm not gonna necessarily take away from a pitcher if they haven't won a certain number of World Series because it's just like
Right.
you're only playing every few games. You can only do so much. Football, as much as it is a really big team game, um, you still have the ability to control the offense like
Totally.
nobody else in sports. And so that's why, and I really believe that there are quarterbacks that like bring a winning culture and like infect winning, um, like nobody else except basketball, where 5v5, one player can have,
Right.
like we've seen with Jordan, with LeBron, lots of players.
Yeah. Totally
Um,
agree.
so that winning matters, talent, statistical production, um, and then longevity are sort of the big things that I look at. But
Yeah, totally agree. A bad quarterback can just absolutely tank a team. A
right,
good quarterback can make a team better. Maybe not always, to the extent that basketball can, where you can
right.
see like LeBron can take a really bad team and win the finals, but it
Well,
certainly can make
not
a
win, but
difference.
he's made it with bad
But he's
teams.
he's won with a bad team,
When?
I'd say. Like
When?
so that I would say the Cavs one of those years that they won.
They've only won it once with the Cavs.
That's
And he
true.
had Kyrie Irving, he had Kevin
Okay,
Love.
okay, that's fair. Did he come? How close did he come with the bad team then? Game seven
Never,
or something?
never close. He's
I
the
thought he
the
had
t-
a pretty tough team one
there are
year.
there are two teams he made it with that were really bad, and he got swept both times or beaten five. I think it was swept and beaten five. The
Okay,
first, the
well, there's
first,
my basketball knowledge for
there
you.
you go.
I
The
feel like I
first
just remember people saying like, "Oh, LeBron took this terrible team and like almost
because
won or something."
because he's taken him. The first time he made it with the Cavs on his second stint, so
Hmm.
2014-15 against the Warriors. Um, Kevin Love got hurt earlier in the playoffs, and then Kyrie got hurt in game one of the finals. And so he basically, and it went 6 games. So he basically took that series 6 games without either of his other stars.
Okay,
Um, and if I'm not mistaken, I think they lost game one.
and he only won it once with the Cavs, huh?
Yeah.
Wow,
Two
what a
with the Heat,
fraud!
once with the Cavs, once
What
with
a
the
fraud!
Lakers.
All
I
right, we're getting a little off topic. Let's get
yeah,
back into
let's dive
quarterbacks
in. Let's
here.
dive in.
We'll get into LeBron
Yeah.
later at a different time.
Yeah.
We're gonna start with one today, and I feel like for this one, maybe we can both go at the same time, sort of, and we'll discuss the merits of each because I
Yeah. So
think
we're
there's going to
somehow,
be a lot of similar people throughout the list. So I
yeah.
think we can both say
Yeah.
each of ours for each number, and then we'll discuss both at the same time.
Yeah. Because we're
Um,
somehow going to argue about number one, even though,
we, we both have the same number one,
yeah.
um, but we feel very differently about it.
Yes, we
So
do.
would you like to unveil who number one is?
I would love to. Number one is Tom Brady. He
Yeah.
is, this is my opinion, he is far and away the greatest NFL player ever, greatest quarterback ever. There is no gap in team sports from one to two like there is in football, in my opinion. It's Tom Brady.
Um, I disagree on that point. First of
I
all,
I figured you
let's
would,
let's
but that's
talk hockey for a second.
okay.
Um, I mean, Wayne Gretzky could have never scored a single goal, and he would be the all-time points leader.
But you also say that you like, is he the best player at playing hockey ever? You say
He's
he's not.
not. He's not the most talented hockey player. Is Tom Brady the most talented football player we've ever seen? I would
It
say no.
depends on how you define talent, but like he is the best player
I'd
at
say
football
I
ever.
would say I would say I would disagree. I don't think he is the best. I don't think he has the most tools of any quarterback ever. I think there are more skilled quarterbacks. I think there are more skilled hockey players that have come after
But
Gretzky, but
let's
Gretzky is the
let's
best
put it
ever.
this way. You're drafting a team right now. Are
Yeah,
you drafting prime Gretzky or a different player?
I don't know because
Because
I
I'm taking
know
Brady.
because I know Gretzky has what it takes to win. That's part of the greatest. And
And he
I agree.
dominated.
I agree. Brady is the greatest of all time.
Yeah. So
I think there's comparable gaps between the
all right.
greatest in other sports. I also think here's where you're gonna hate it. I do think Tom Brady is overrated by the media.
I know you do.
And see, this is where it gets a little bit construed. I agree that he's the best that's ever played. It's hard to it's kind of a default thing at this point. He's got
You
more championships than any team has championships, right? I mean,
hmm
that's a pretty mind-boggling stat.
hmm
Um, but somehow the media has created this fantasy that Tom Brady can never make a mistake, and that's just not true. He will tell you that's not true.
Oh, I said
I think he would probably agree with me more than a lot of people than a lot of other fans if I were to explain this take to him because
probably, but he has
it's just
he has humility when he talks about stuff, which part of why we love Tom Brady. But so Tom Brady can absolutely make mistakes. I'm not sitting
mhm,
here saying he's superhuman, but here's the thing about Brady. So the championships is just absurd, right?
yeah,
Um, as far as you look at winning, like if you just look at winning, there's nobody in sports that compares. Like I know Jordan won six, but seven Super Bowls is so much more impressive than six NBA Finals rings, right? Like if here's why if we can list a lot of NBA players that have won at least five.
okay,
The second highest quarterbacks with rings is four. There's two that have four. There's one that has three. I think that's it. And then he has seven. Like the gap there is just pretty astronomical. Um,
yeah,
so that's what I mean by that, right? Um, and not only that, the number of times that he has made the AFC championship in our lifetime, ridiculous, right? He has made the AFC championship more than he has not made it
mhm,
in his career. No one else has ever come close to doing something like that. And then on top of that, if you look at playoff numbers, right, it's just not even close. Nobody has the number of touchdowns he does. Nobody has the number of yards he does. Nobody has the number of wins he does. Not even close. And then regular season, he's the all-time leader in touchdowns and all-time leader in yards. Certainly, a large part of that is because of the longevity that he's played, but it's the fact that his year-to-year production this long is also still phenomenal, right? Like still today, he's putting up MVP like numbers. You know what I'm saying? Not he
yeah.
hasn't
He's
won an
putting up
MVP in a
good
few years,
numbers.
but he's like it's not like he's playing until he's 45 and he's putting up middle of the table numbers every year, but just because he's playing so long, the cumulative is high, right? Like
Yeah,
the cumulative is high, but it's his year-to-year production is still phenomenal. Um,
I do think the media though has also had that they started to overlook how good some of the teams that he was on were, and they'll go back and just attribute all the success of the Patriots dynasty to Tom Brady by himself. And
people
that's a very dangerous line of thinking to go down because think about some of the players that were on those, like he doesn't win what two of those Super Bowls if it's not for Vinatieri, right? Like
well,
making those kicks. I mean,
yeah, okay.
you
So
have the greatest, like, is Vinatieri the greatest kicker that's ever played?
yeah, Yeah.
So you have the
But
greatest kicker, like you got some
but
great receivers on those teams, great cornerbacks, great defenses.
let's also be fair. The Carolina Super Bowl, Vinatieri missed 2 field goals and an extra point in that game. Maybe
Yeah.
just 2 field goals. So maybe if he makes
So
those,
he makes some errors as well. But
if he
I'm
makes.
just
But
saying
so
that
this is
it's
okay.
not like
This
it's not like he was dragging horrible teams to these Super Bowls, and if any other
sure,
quarterback was in there, they would have been 1-15 or something.
sure. But he also is not just a product of phenomenal teams because he's done it over so many years. He's done it in different offensive systems, and a lot of these guys like Randy Moss, historically great wide receiver, Brady had for only a couple years. Gronkowski, probably the best tight end ever. Um,
Mm-hmm.
had him for a while. But other guys like
Brady never won with Moss, right? Correct.
no, no, they did not.
Which is a big. I think that has to be a big black mark on like the fact that you could have Randy Moss. Like think about that. Okay, think about that receiving core that they had.
Okay, but it
That,
was three. It
like,
was Brady played 2 seasons with Randy Moss.
but think about like how does that team not win?
They in
You know?
'07 they should have won. In
Yeah,
'09,
and
2009 is the one of the three worst teams that Brady was on with the Patriots. So that just wasn't a good team.
it's just a. I don't know. I,
But
I
you're
I
gonna tell me
I will
because he didn't.
always hold that against him a little bit that he wasn't able to win with Randy Moss because that team was so good.
But they only
Like
had 1 year. They only had 2 years together.
they
1 year
should
that
have
was
got it
good.
done though. They should have got it
Okay,
done.
see now you're talking crazy because most quarterbacks
You think they
have
shouldn't have got it done?
they should have won that Super Bowl, but the
Yeah.
fact that they didn't win 1 year isn't like a knock. Like Peyton Manning had Marvin Harrison and Reggie Wayne at the same time. He only won one in like 10 years.
Yeah, but
He
he's
should have
also
won
playing
more.
against these Patriot teams too.
See, this is where your bias
It's two
against
great
Brady is.
teams. It's
It's
two
two great
great teams
teams.
that go up
But
against each other.
the early
Um,
years also, right? Like the early years, the defenses were better than the offense. Those first three
mhm,
Super Bowls. The thing that set Brady apart then was like just the clutch factor that he sort of had, his
right.
ability to be calm and cool under pressure, do the job that he needed to do.
Hmm.
Right, like a game-winning drive in '01 against the Rams, game-winning drive in '03 against the Panthers. It wasn't till like '07 they had this historic year where they're like arguably the best offense ever, and then he gets hurt the next year. '09 is sort of like bad year. He's getting back to health, and then 2010 to now, he's just been unbelievable. But
Yeah, I still think he played poorly in the second Giants Super Bowl that they
okay, yeah. This
lost.
is this is the other thing I want to say about Brady. Um, people will some people, the media maybe overlook it. He's had
Hmm.
a number like every NFL quarterback has a number of playoff games where he has not played well.
Yeah,
Like the great quarterbacks, the NFL is so competitive. The great ones will have games where they dominate in the playoffs. Like they have to if they're going to be good. And Brady has a long list of games that he has just dominated in the playoffs.
hmm,
2011, he threw like 400 yards, 5 touchdowns against the Broncos. The 2014 AFC Championship, they blow out the Colts. 2016 AFC Championship, blow out the Steelers. Like there's plenty of games where he's dominated. The What you'll also find though is most games where he has played poorly, he will still in the end pull it together and like give his teams a chance to win. So '07 and 2011, he played bad in those Super Bowls. '07, it was kind of his offensive line was getting dominated. 2011, like he didn't play well, right? He
yeah,
mental mistake early with the safety, intentional grounding from the
yeah.
end zone. He threw a bad interception late in that game. He
And that
didn't.
was also the year. That was the year with the Welker pass, right? The
Yeah, we're
one that
Walker.
everyone thought Welker just
Well, he dropped it.
missed. He did drop it, but it wasn't like it was a. It would have been it was a somewhat difficult catch. If I'm remember
I've,
like
I've,
it's
so
one that
it's
a
not, it
guy
didn't,
of his caliber you probably would want him to catch it, but it's not like wow that's one of the worst
no,
drops we've ever seen.
no, but
Like
it's one like
I think there has to be a little bit of a shared blame on that
if
one.
I'm on a football field and I get
Hmm.
that pass, it's very embarrassing. Like it's disappointing if me don't catch it. So it's
Okay.
not it like he had to turn. It wasn't like it hit
Yeah.
him. You know what I'm saying? Like
I think Brady's not completely void of any blame in that situation. And that was
if
when that play is kind of where I started clicking on like the media will just never blame Tom Brady for anything here.
But at the same time, it's like 80% of the blame is on Welker on that
Like,
throw.
yeah, you can totally say he should have
80, so
caught
it's
it, but you also should
he
expect a better throw in that
right. You
situation.
want a better throw, but at the end of the day, he put it right on him. Welker just had to turn. And there were also a number of drops. You look at the end of that game, there were some horrible drops, like one after another that don't get talked about. But so this is my thing. Brady plays bad in those Super Bowls.
Yeah.
He still leads them on a drive at the end of the game to take the lead, like game-winning drives, and then the defense goes up and coughs it up both times, right towards the end. In 07, Brady had what would be considered the greatest throw of all time, also on a Hail Mary to Randy Moss. That was like this close to being caught. Like it hit both of Randy Moss's hands.
Mm.
And he probably threw it like 70 yards in the air. Like incredible throw. The defender was right there. It was tough, but
Yeah.
he leads him on a game-winning drive. Like every bad game he has, not every, almost every, he shows up at the end, gives them a chance to win. Like you don't see Brady getting blown out ever.
Yeah.
It happened
But
once in the playoffs.
does that have to also be a little bit attributed to if Tom Brady's having a bad game and they're still in it, someone else is probably keeping them in it.
Sure.
Right.
No, like
You know,
he's been on good teams, but he's led like these game-winning drives in the clutch when he needed to. Most years, like 2015, the Broncos defense was just unstoppable and they were killing the Patriots offensive line. And the offense wasn't playing well. Down the stretch, Brady brings it together, leads him on a drive, brings him into field goal range twice. Belichick they go for it twice, don't get it. And then Brady goes down, scores a touchdown with time running out, has to go for two. They don't get the 2-point conversion to tie it. Like he always keeps them in it and like gives them a chance to win, or almost always, which you don't see. Like how many times have they lost the game because he threw an interception on the drive to go win the game? Almost never, right? Like he's
yeah,
thrown.
I don't have a great memory when it comes to football because I don't care about it that much.
So he's thrown interceptions to end games, but
yeah,
rare. So that's just my thing with Brady. But he's the GOAT.
My last thing on Brady is I think recently when he's had a bad game, it mostly in the regular season, like he's been out pretty decent in playoffs if I'm remembering correctly, but in the regular season he'll have these bad games where it's like you're watching him and it's almost like you have to wonder if this guy's ever played football before. Like he'll just have these horrible games occasionally, not frequently, like probably once or twice, maybe twice at most a year, like once a year kind of thing, where he'll throw some interceptions where it's almost like it would have been harder for that guy to make the interception if you had walked it over and handed it to him. Some of these just like these weird decisions and stuff where it's almost just like what is going on here.
He's definitely had some bad games, but like everybody has. I mean, everybody has.
So that's Tom Brady. I do think when my initial opinion is fair, I think people hear it and think that it's something different.
Yeah.
But we both have him at number one, which is a testament to his career, I think.
Yeah.
All right. Let's do number two. I'm gonna really shake things up here. I think. I don't know if this is. I mean, like we said, football is not like one of my main sports. It's probably. I don't know if I'd put it below basketball or above basketball. It depends on the year, kind of thing. But I have no idea how hot of a take this is. Okay. So we'll see. You're gonna have to be the judge. Do you want me to go with it, or do you want to go for your two first?
Actually, I'll do.
We'll both give them, and then we'll discuss both. But
all right, Joe Montana is number 2 on my list.
Okay, I don't have Montana.
Who do you have?
I have John Elway.
Wow. Okay.
Because so here's why. To me, John Elway is just like an absolute stallion of a player.
Yeah.
I just think he's maybe the overall best two-way quarterback that's played. There's some guys who you probably like you could say like they're better runners or they're better passers and they can run or whatever. I just feel like John Elway was a very well-rounded quarterback, and he is maybe the only ever quarterback that's also gotten to 5 Super Bowls. I don't know if that's true, but he was, I think, the first one to get to 5 Super Bowls.
Yeah.
Um,
I don't think anyone else has made
he
five.
he won two besides Brady, obviously.
Mhm.
He won two of them. He went up against some really good teams. That's something that I think should be taken into consideration. Is like, yeah, he went 2 and 3 in Super Bowls, but it it wasn't like they should have won every year. Like there were some really good teams when he was playing. Um, and yeah, I just feel like if I was building a team, he would be high up on the list of guys I would want as my quarterback.
He certainly was incredible, all-time great. Um,
Like,
the one-
how hot of a take is that? Is that something I'm going to get
um,
absolutely
I,
killed for?
I find it to be semi hot of a take because there's
Okay.
a few guys that I think are definitely better.
Okay.
But it's not absurd. Like having him in the
Okay.
top five isn't a bad take by any means. But the one knock that I have with John Elway, the thing that
Hmm.
kind of I struggle with is the fact that he never won a Super Bowl where the offense was based around his passing. The 2 years that they
Yeah.
won, their run game was better because they had Terrell
Which is fair.
Davis,
Yeah.
and Terrell Davis was a 2,000-yard rusher at least one of those Super Bowl seasons, maybe not both. He won an MVP, and like Terrell Davis was their guy. Not to say
Definitely.
John Elway wasn't great, and John Elway making 5 Super Bowls like he's historically good.
Hmm.
So it's
And he
not
did win a Super Bowl MVP as
he,
well.
he did, but
So that is, I mean, I definitely understand that was kind of probably a little bit of a ceremonial one,
yeah,
but I feel like if he had gone out there
he
and thrown 150 yards and Davis ran for 500,
300, sure, sure,
it wouldn't have
no
just
doubt,
given it to him.
yeah, right. But he's an incredible player. Like if you watch his highlights, like the guy had a cannon.
Yeah,
Like he can sling it. And then obviously he was a great athlete as well, running the ball. I don't think I would have him as the best two-way quarterback ever, but he's at least like he's top three for sure.
yeah.
Um,
Also, I believe if I read this correctly, he's one of only two. He might be the only quarterback I think that has ever scored a rushing touchdown in 4 Super Bowls, and I think he's one of only
I
like
mean,
two players total,
I would believe that.
which is kind of crazy for a quarterback to be in there.
Yeah,
And yeah, definitely, the criticism that he wasn't necessarily the center of those offenses is totally fair, but I think there is also something to be said for the fact that he was able to kind of adapt his game and
sure, sure.
take on the leadership to bring
Right.
those teams there.
Right. Like when
But
I say knock on him, I don't mean that to be, oh, he wasn't great. I
yeah,
just mean
totally.
that like he's not second, in my opinion. So
Yeah,
Joe
which is totally
Montana,
fair.
like
I
Joe
will
Montana.
admit I did a little. This is a little bit just to kind of have a hot take. I'll admit that
Okay,
because I
okay.
understand. I understand the whole Joe Montana. Interesting point though. John Elway threw for more career yards than Joe Montana.
So this is the other thing. It's really hard evaluating numbers in the NFL,
Hmm.
because I mean you look at the numbers of guys in the 80s and even the 90s compared to today. It's not. It's just you know what I'm saying. Like Philip Rivers has career numbers wise way more production
Right.
than John Elway, than Joe Montana, than a lot of guys. Philip Rivers is not close to being a top 10 quarterback of all time. You know what I'm saying?
Well. Let's see if he's in there.
Okay, okay. If you have him on here, like I'll be upset. He's not
He is
even
he
close.
is one of the greatest shot putters of all time.
I would agree with that. I would agree with that. You want to talk about ugliest throwing motion that somehow works? Like it's unbelievable. But
Yeah.
Joe Montana is number two for me, just because. I mean, after Brady, you think about winning, like you think about Montana. Obviously, Teddy Bradshaw also had 4 Super Bowls, but Joe Montana with the 4 rings and
Hmm.
the clutch factor that he had is pretty undeniable. Like you hear any stories about those 49ers teams, they talk about him, showing up to the huddle. I forget which Super Bowl. I think it was against the Bengals. They need to go on a game-winning drive, 90 yards, and he's just pointing at someone in the crowd. It's like, oh, look, they're at this game. Like his ability to calm the offense down, to just be cool under pressure, and then just go execute the offense and chip away at it and go 90 yards, score a touchdown and win the game, is incredible. And if you're ignoring Brady, it's unmatched in history. His ability to show up big in the big moments and just play dominant football. I really believe that his passing numbers are just less impressive than today's because of the era, because of the way the game was played. I think as far as passing the football, like
Mhm.
he's right up there. He could throw it just as well on anybody, and his ability to help win is what just set him apart for me. So that's why I have him at 2.
Yeah, totally understandable. I have him at 3. Just
Okay.
partially, I just really put a lot of stock into Elway's kind of dual threat
Yeah.
aspect of it. I don't know. I don't know why necessarily, but I just feel like I just love the presence Elway has. But yeah, I mean Montana
Yeah.
it's hard to. He's one of those guys. It's hard to find a knock on him. I
Sure.
mean, it's kind of like maybe you say, oh, he wasn't the best runner, but it was. I mean, it's not. I feel like nowadays we're kind of spoiled with all these guys that can scramble and stuff, where
Yeah.
it's
I
like
really
that is
couldn't
not a
care less.
requirement of the position.
Yeah.
Right.
I
We've
really
seen it with some of the best guys. And we talked about, Elway not necessarily being the center of those Super Bowl teams. Montana's been there. He's won 4. He's also got 3 MVPs of those 4. So he
right.
certainly was the focal point. The one sort of hole that you can poke in Montana is like, oh, does he do it without Jerry Rice? But he did have Jerry Rice,
Right.
so
So I
it's
mean,
it's kind of a mute point there.
like
There's always
all
those hypotheticals that
right.
you can pull out, but at the end of the
all
day,
all great players have great teammates. It's just you can't.
right,
It's just an argument that's just not really fair to make. I feel like,
right,
does John Elway win if he doesn't have Terrell Davis?
totally,
Maybe not. Does
totally,
you know Brady win if he doesn't have good defenses early in his career? Does Brady, like, you can pick
100%,
holes everywhere. So it's just,
100%.
what I'm saying, it's too hard. But my number 3, which will be probably my boldest take, and I want to
Okay,
just make sure I have the numbers to back it up ready. Number 3 is Drew Brees
okay,
as the third best.
okay.
And
Breeze I have him as an honorable mention. I don't know
so
why, but for some reason, there's something about him that it's just like, for me,
so
it's like I just
he,
don't know if he's top
he's
5.
wildly overlooked. He never
Yeah,
won an MVP, which is
really?
which is a travesty. He deserved it
Wow.
in 2011.
Who
Um,
won it? Who won it that year?
Rodgers. And Rodgers was
Okay.
incredible. Don't get me wrong. 2011 was kind of this anomaly of passing production where
Was that
you
the?
had
I think. Go ahead. Yeah.
Brady, Breeze, and Rodgers were all right there. And then Stafford also threw 5,000 yards. There were 3 5,000-yard passers that year,
Hmm.
which maybe there was, I think there was one before that year. Like, let me look. It had
Yeah.
only
Okay. I
happened like
remember
once. It
seeing that
was,
stat.
it's ridiculous what happened. Yeah, I no, there was one. There were two, sorry, two 5,000-yard passing seasons in history, and then 3 people did it in 2011. Like, it was just incredible. And so the year that Brady had, the year that Breeze had, and the year that Rodgers had was unbelievable. I think it's crazy that Breeze didn't win that Super Bowl. He had 5,000 plus yards. I think he had 40 plus touchdowns, both of which were better than what Rodgers had. Um, it like Breeze was incredible. So the Breeze gets overlooked because he doesn't have an MVP and he's very much not flashy. Like, he's this small guy
Yeah.
that's not throwing bombs a lot. You know what I'm saying? But he's incredibly accurate, and just some of the stats that I think set him apart. So there now have been 14 5,000-yard passing seasons in history. Um, that number is going to continue to go up, especially with the 17th game. Like, Justin Herbert hit it last year by 14 yards and he played an extra game. So it's like not the same. But of those 14, Breeze has 5. Brady's the only other player to have multiple, and he has 2.
Wow.
And one of them came last year. He might have thrown, I think he threw 5,000 through 16 games last year, but like 5 out of 14, and nobody else has multiple except for Brady with 2. Kind of crazy how he dominated.
Yeah.
Breeze also has the most seasons with 30 touchdowns. He has 10. Brady and Manning both have 9, I believe. So if you look at like passing production and the numbers, Breeze is historically good and underappreciated. Like, he made 5,000-yard seasons look normal when nobody else, like, it. You know what I'm saying? This
Yeah.
is like the passing numbers, you want to say they're inflated now with the era, the way football is played, but he's still doing it in a way that no one else is now. And
Yeah.
there are other people that are great. Along with that, Breeze has had some of the worst defenses in NFL history. Like he literally in the mid 2010s, I think the worst, I'm going to forget the year. His defense gave up an average of 6 yards a play, I think. So you
Not
think about
ideal.
like that you give up 6 yards a play, it's horrible.
Yeah.
And think about his surrounding cast. How many great players has he had? Jimmy Graham was phenomenal when he was
Hmm.
there, only a few years. Brandon Cooks was really good for a couple years. Michael Thomas has obviously been really good. The next bet, like Marquise Colston, is the guy that he had for the longest time. Good player, but he doesn't compare to a Randy Moss,
Yeah.
to a Marvin Harrison, to a Jerry Rice.
Now, what
It's
about the running backs though? Because I was thinking, is part of Breeze getting so many yards? I feel like, and you can correct me if I'm wrong here, because obviously I've admitted I'm not the biggest football brain here, but I feel like the Saints do a lot of kind of like swing passes, sort of like, the Saints running backs for years have been great for fantasy because they are
yes.
thrown to so much. Now,
So it's
how much of that is okay, rather than running a sweep and getting 5 yards, Breeze is dumping it off to them and they're picking up yards that way.
so their offense is certainly based around a lot of shorter throws. It's a lot of screens, a lot of things like that. Sean Payton is one of the best offensive minds ever. But it's still he's playing like he's just playing the game
Hmm.
smart. Like their
Okay.
offense works. And he's incredibly accurate. Like if you look at his highlights, he's not necessarily throwing a ton of like 40-yard bombs, right? Like it's a completely different highlight tape than Mahomes has.
Right.
But his precision on his passing is crazy. And his completion percentage is always really high. So it's not like he's throwing 5,000 yards, but he has way more attempts than everybody. Like he's throwing 5,000 yards, but he's doing it at a more efficient clip than anybody else is at the same time. So it's insane what he's done. And he has a Super Bowl to his name, which obviously matters. But then he's also had some of the most heartbreaking losses ever, right? In 2017, he starts the game slow, brings the team back, goes on a great second half, gives them the lead late in the game, and then the Minneapolis miracle happens where his
Hmm.
defense just
Yeah.
collapses. The next year, they're in the NFC Championship, and we have probably the worst missed call in sports history with that pass interference. You remember that
Hmm.
one against the Rams?
Yeah. I don't
Um,
remember. I can't picture it, but I do remember it happening.
so third down, he throws like an out route to a receiver, and the cornerback basically is like, I got beat, so I'm just going to hit the receiver. Like, I'm just going
Hmm.
to lay him out. The ball was very clearly not there.
Yeah.
He didn't make a play. He just tackled the guy.
Yeah.
They
I
didn't throw the
remember it
flag.
being an egregious penalty.
If they get the first down, they can pretty much run the clock down. The chances of them losing that game are so slim.
Yeah.
Um, to be fair, Breeze did throw an interception in overtime. That wasn't a good throw, but it like he's still like the game's never in overtime if it's just so.
Yeah.
He's had a number of very unfortunate. He's had unfortunate things happen. He's also the only. The Saints are the only team to, I think, ever finish 13-3 and not have a first round bye, and it's happened to the Saints multiple times.
Yeah. That's tough.
So it's like he's just with the terrible defenses, some crazy endings that had nothing to do with him, or crazy things happening to determine a game, and then just sort of, I feel like he's the most unlucky quarterback ever. And not to say he's better than a Montana or a Brady as far as winning, but his production is just insane. So that's why I have him 3.
Yeah. You make a great case for him.
Nice try.
Definitely a good case. Who do you have it for?
Peyton Manning.
Okay, same.
All
Nice.
right.
And this is one I've been sitting here and I've been wondering if I had him too high because when I was
No.
looking at his actual stats, they didn't jump off the page as much as I was expecting them to for some reason. Just
They should.
some of his like accolades and stuff. I just for some reason thought that he had more.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean,
I mean, they're very good. They're very good stats, definitely. But I was looking at like, okay, he's only got two Super Bowls, and you think, okay, well, he played against Brady his whole career, basically. But then when you look at his, it wasn't like he was going to the AFC Championship every year and losing to Brady necessarily. So I
mhm.
was expecting him to have like more AFC Championship appearances or something like that. Um, yeah, I mean, the stats themselves are great.
So
I'll let you talk about it because you're the football guy, but
yeah. So
I'm glad that you've kind of validated this pick for me.
yes, without a doubt a good pick. I almost had him at 3. Him and Breeze, it was really tough for me to decide. But I mean, regular season numbers, it's unbelievable what he has done. I believe he only had, aside from his last year, he only had one season where he didn't throw 4,000 yards. That was like 2005, which is not a normal thing. 4,000 yards is impressive. It's become more normal now, but in the 2000s, it wasn't a normal thing. He has had the single season touchdown record at 2 different occasions. He broke it when he threw 49 in like 2004. Brady then broke it, and then he broke it again in 2013, which he still has. He's held the
Mhm.
single season passing yards record for a time because he broke it in 2013. Um, and maybe still does. I don't know if that one's been broken. No, it hasn't. So he has the single season yards and touchdowns record. He did it both in the same season. Um, so as far as passing production, that 2013 season is unmatched.
Mhm.
Um, the knock with him is the playoff production, right?
Right.
That's which is the big reason. The thing that set him apart with Breeze is he's won more Super Bowls than Breeze did, but you and I might have had a shot to win a Super Bowl with that defense in 2015. Like
Oh,
he
I
was
don't know
horrible.
about that.
He was horrible.
You saw my spiral the last
Yeah,
couple of
yeah,
months. I don't know
yeah.
if I'd have a
Maybe
shot
not
on
you. Maybe if you practiced, but
I'd
in
run the
that
Wildcat.
in 2015, he's played 10 games, started 9, threw 9 touchdowns and 17 interceptions. He was horrible that year. Like he was awful at football his last year in the league. Um,
Didn't he
and
have
his
like nerve issues or whatever? Yeah.
because his injury in 2010 or 11 that he had like neck surgery, which is why the
Mhm.
Colts cut him, was just because they
Right.
didn't think he would ever recover. And he obviously did. He had some incredible seasons with the Broncos, but he was really bad in 2015. He also early in his career just could not get past the Patriots. Like the Patriots
Yeah.
had his number, and they made him look bad. Like I think he scored 3 in one of those playoff games. They played him in 03 and 04. One was AFC Championship, one was divisional round, and they just made him look bad. Like Ty Law picked him off 3 times in one game. Um, they had his number. 06, he wins that Super Bowl, beats the Patriots on the way, kind of gets that monkey off his back. Um, 09 has another incredible year, goes to the Super Bowl against the Saints, has a good game, and then throws the interception to lose it. So this is my other thing is in the games that he has lost in the playoffs, often it's largely on his shoulders, right?
Okay.
So game bad against the Patriots in those early years, game losing interception against the Saints. 2012, losing the wild card round to the Ravens, who go on to win the Super Bowl, but were not the favorite. He
Hmm.
threw an interception in overtime that allowed the Ravens to get good field possession to go in. I think he threw another interception late in that game that was crucial. Um, the Broncos, I think, scored 2 special teams touchdowns in that game. So it wasn't even like their offense was moving to like keep him in it. He just didn't play well. 2013, historic year, but then he gets killed in the Super Bowl,
Yeah.
plays horrible. The next year gets upset again by the Colts, played really bad. It looked like this is the end. So there's a lot of games where he's losing in the playoffs, and
Hmm.
it looks like, all right, this was bad, you know?
Yeah.
Um, we talked about with Brady. He's had bad games in the playoffs, but it's not a lot of, okay, start to finish, you just were really bad. Or
Right.
late in the game, you just threw it away. Manning did it a lot. Like his total playoff numbers are good, because he had a lot of good playoff games, but the last one of the season was often not great. And so that's the reason that I put him at 4 and not 3. His football IQ and his preparation and work ethic and his ability to just outsmart the defense is like Brady maybe is on that level. But the two of them, it's just nobody's ever done anything like it. No one has like made football a chess game the way they have.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I'm at 4.
All right, who do we have at 5?
I have Elway.
Okay.
Yours?
Man, so 5 is the one that I'm just not really sure about.
Yeah, this was so tough. It was between
And
3 for me.
and part of it is because, I don't necessarily know the most about some guys. I think I'm gonna have to go with Aaron Rodgers because I do think that he's just like he's similar to Elway in that like he can almost do it all. He's not necessarily the best runner anymore, but he's a pretty athletic guy and he's such a natural when it comes to throwing. I also think similar to what you were talking about with Breeze, I do think Rodgers has been super unlucky when it comes to, I've seen, stats of, I kind of have one pulled up, but like if you go through some of his losses over the last like 10 years or so, a lot of them are not, it's not like he really had a bad game necessarily. It's like his defense gave up 40 points or like you look at the scores and it's not like he was getting shut out or only scoring one touchdown a game. I also was looking at someone like Johnny Unitas, but I just don't know enough about him to kind of put him in here. He's got, I mean, from what I've read, he was an incredible quarterback and whatnot, but I had to give the edge to Rodgers here.
Yeah.
So
Unitas and Staubach are two that like have to be up there, are probably both top 10 quarterbacks, but it's just too hard to rank them. Like they played so long
such
ago,
a different era.
Yeah. Rodgers was one of the 3 that I was considering. The reason I put Elway in and not Rodgers mainly has to do with the winning, right? Like making 5 Super Bowls, winning 2. Rodgers has only made the 1.
Right.
The thing with Rodgers for me that I kind of the knock, because I really was close to putting him at 5, is the fact that he had a chunk of time in the middle of his career where he just wasn't great. He kind of hit the ground running, comes in to replace Brett Favre and is just incredible. Makes the Super Bowl in his third year as a starter. Wins the Super Bowl, follows it up with a 2011 performance where he won MVP. I don't think he deserved MVP, but still like unbelievable season.
Right.
And then the last few years have arguably he's been at his best. Like what he's done the last few years has been incredible.
Yeah.
If you're talking pure talent, it's hard to argue there's everyone that just pure talent, what they're able to do, throwing the football, the way they throw the football, hard to argue anyone is more purely talented than Rodgers. Yeah. He's so good, but it's those middle years where his numbers aren't as great. And if you were just watching him, like he just wasn't incredible. He had like a stretch in 2016 where he finished the season really well. But sort of, I want to say it's like the 15 to 18-ish. I'd have to go back and look, is where it's like he just wasn't great. And so that's kind of the only knock I would have on him. And then the fact that he hasn't won more.
Yeah, the winning is definitely, I almost didn't put him in because he's only won a Super Bowl, a single Super Bowl. But I think the thing with Rodgers, I feel like if you had put him in place of other quarterbacks that won during the time since he won the first one, I think he also wins those. I think he gets it done. Like I think it's not necessarily his fault that he's only won a single one. But yeah, I feel like we've definitely not necessarily agreed on everyone, but I feel like the contentious point was definitely at the beginning with
of course, Brady. Which it has to be. Because I'm very passionate about Brady being head and shoulders above everyone else.
Yeah, and I'm very passionate about the fact that he's somehow overrated.
I know you are. We've been having this argument since we were on the school bus and like middle school.
I know, but the strange thing is that you used to be on my side somewhat.
Because to be fair, before 2014, when he had the 3 rings, he had some years in there where he wasn't, like 2013, he wasn't phenomenal. 2012, he wasn't great. He was good, but those 2 years where he didn't look like GOAT level quarterback.
Yeah.
And so at that point, I would not have considered him the GOAT. Then when he won the fourth one and played really well that year, it was like, okay, this is impressive. 2015, he was incredible. 2016, win the Super Bowl. It's since then where every year he's added to his legacy that now it's not close. But in 2012-13, I would have agreed with you that he was kind of overrated.
Okay.
Because it was like a Brady can do no wrong, but he hadn't won a Super Bowl in 10 years.
Yeah.
The Super Bowls, the defense was probably better than the offense. He was struggling a little bit.
Yeah. I think the whole Brady is the best quarterback ever. I think that started too soon. That conversation. I think it is not really debatable now, but I think that it started too early.
Yeah. I think he was arguably the best when they beat the Seahawks. And then I think when they beat the Falcons, it was solidified. Like, okay, no, he is the best. And then the stuff he's done since then is just icing on the cake. Like, okay.
Who else did you have in mind? Or are there others that you have?
Rodgers and Dan Marino was the
other
one.
Marino's obviously, Marino's a big he's a big name, but he's also a tough one because he just never finished the job.
Never won. And this is the other thing. So I was looking at it. I was gonna put him in there because he's arguably the best passer ever, like his ability to make throws. And his stats would be really good now, but they were in the 80s and 90s. Yeah. Like, it was an anomaly at that time, what he was doing statistically. But in the playoffs, he threw more interceptions than he had games. So it was like...
That's tough.
It seems like he wasn't playing at the same level in the playoffs. And I know he probably didn't have great teams around him, but it never won a Super Bowl. I don't know how many he made.
I think he only made one.
I was gonna say I think he made one.
I think he only made one in
his inability to win is just kind of like, I can't put you in there.
I also had Steve Young in the conversation just as an option, some sort of similar to why I have Elway so high, which is like he had the dual threat kind of aspect of it, but he just doesn't quite have the numbers to warrant being in the top 5 for me.
He's not top 5, but
so let's run it back. My top 5 ends up being this is what I mean. I had I don't know if we'll be able to see that, but I have Unitas in there on the list as my 5, but I just sitting here, I couldn't do it. I don't know why. Just got a cold feet a little bit, but I have Rodgers, Manning, Montana, Elway, Brady.
All right. I have Elway, Manning, Breeze, Montana, and Brady.
All right. That's episode 3. It was definitely it was interesting to kind of be able to hear you kind of gush about it a little bit. This is up your alley. So
it is without a doubt. So
kind of want to just kind of sort of pass the mic over to you a little bit for this one. But
we'll have to do
how would you rate my list given just on like let's say a 10-point scale, how credible, I guess, would you give it?
I give it a solid like 7, honestly, because my thing is it's just Elway's too high in my opinion.
Yeah.
But if you just slide him down and put the others up, great list.
I feel like I made some solid points for why he's where he is.
I can get it. Like it's not absolutely ridiculous. You know what I mean? Like it's not like if you put, which I don't know, maybe in the NBA, if you put someone other than Jordan or LeBron in the top 2, it's absurd.
I'll take it. I'll take that.
So, yeah. So, I can respect it.
Sweet. All right. There's episode 3.
There you go.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Rank and Debate podcast. If you did, if you would be so kind as to subscribe if you're watching on YouTube or listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. If you're on YouTube, if you would be so kind as to leave a like on the video, that would be amazing. Or if you're listening to it on a podcast service, please, rate the show or share it with a friend. It would mean a lot to us. We really enjoy talking about this stuff. So if you think a friend would enjoy it, if you wouldn't mind mentioning it to them and sending them our way, that would just be awesome. Otherwise, hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you for listening. I hope you had a good time.